We are back with our budget discussions today. We have Dawn Diener in front of us, who is the public defender. Dawn, thank you for being here. I'm going to just take a quick moment and give a shout out to some of the other folks who are here in the audience. We have Councilmember Bill Pridemore, who is the budget chair for the Metro Council. We also have Councilmember Larry Hager, and we're also joined by Councilmember Russ Pulley. Thank you all for being here. I appreciate it. I'm going to turn this to Talia, and then she's going to turn it back to you, and you can introduce who you brought with you. So, Talia.
The public defender provides legal representation for those accused, primarily the indigent. They have a current Metro budget of $7.3 million and 83.99 FTEs. They have requested $656,900 for FY17, and that includes 8 FTEs. And Public Defender Diener will be walking you through the details of that request.
Look forward to it. Go for it.
Thank you. Good morning. It's good to be here. This is Annette Crutchfield. She is our Administrative Services Manager and all-around fairy godmother of the office who takes very good care of us and in every way we need. So I'm pleased to have her here with us. And she's a great budget moderator for us. Does a great job. So 8 full-time employees on top of almost 84. Why do we need that? So let me tell you, our highest priority this year, and I think is absolutely critical for us to have, is a position that's called a business analyst. But what does that mean? What do we need that person?
That's one position out of that. Okay,
yes.
Right.
So this is really about data.
Okay.
So the things that I think the Public Defender's Office needs to be able to answer and wants to be able to answer are a multitude of questions, like how many cases does the average lawyer handle in a year? What percentage of our clients' cases are dismissed?
Could you not answer that for me right now?
Probably not. I could give you the total number of cases that we have.
Okay.
But if I wanted to tell you a lawyer in General Sessions Court is on average handling this many cases, we have some challenges there. And let me sort of talk about how we got there.
Okay.
So prior to 2000, we kept all data by hand. And then in 2000, when GIS came about and we got the integrated information systems, GIS designed...
Did you guys participate in that? That's
yes, and it's a great partnership amongst all of the criminal justice agencies, really unique in the country, and I think provides Nashville a lot of benefits to have that integration. So GIS built us a data management system, and its capacity to track information, store information, collect what could be really useful information is broad. And so we switched to that in 2000 and then continued to use it. And I think at the time I was a line defender in the office.
Right.
And as we switched to that, I think because historically the Public Defender's Office has always been stretched thin. We didn't manage our data input nearly as rigorously as we should have been. And so when I became the public defender in 2008 and started looking closer, didn't really start looking closer to the data issues until a few years later. And it was then that I discovered we had some significant data integrity issues. So if you're handling 25 to 30,000 cases in a year and all of that information
Is that about what you all handle?
Yes.
Okay.
And so if you're putting that much information into a database and you're having 70 different employees who are all entering information into that database, and you don't have somebody keeping a pretty close eye on the processes that you're using, doing auditing to make sure that those processes are being followed correctly and that the data going in is good data, you're going to have a problem. And so in 2012, we realized we had that kind of problem. When we finally did an audit, realized we just had thousands and thousands of cases that had been entered into the system that had no information, hadn't been closed properly, et cetera. So GIS helped us with that cleanup.
Right.
And we kind of got a fresh start. But we continue to have sort of the same problems for the same reasons. We do not have anybody in our office who has the time or the responsibility for managing how 70, now 80 employees are putting information into that system. And so we have two problems. We have how reliable is the information that's going in,
right,
and are we maintaining that with integrity? And then our second problem is who's pulling information out of that system and who's able to do that. And so we have an issue in both places. We don't have anybody who's maintaining the integrity. We do trainings at the office, so we try to train our staff on how to put information in there properly. But if you don't have somebody running an audit report at the end of every month to make sure people are following those processes, then it gets out of hand pretty darn quickly. And so we still struggle with that. GIS has helped us quite a bit in the last few years to improve our checks and balances on how we're entering information, but it still requires somebody who's maintaining that, auditing it, training new employees, identifying when problems exist, figuring out how to correct those problems. And we don't have that person. GIS has the staff to maintain the database, and they built it when we need upgrades in the functionality to it. They work on that. They have programmers who do that, but they don't have anybody on their staff who is designated to do the kinds of things that are maintaining processes and helping us to maintain our integrity.
So Dawn, let me ask you this, because if I'm watching at home and I see, gosh, the public defender wants 8 full-time employees, this would be the first priority that you all are thinking
Absolutely.
about. How is that relevant to the people that you serve? How is that going to make what you do better?
Well, I think that the way it makes it better is that you cannot know how well you are operating if you don't have any ability to look at what you're doing.
Okay.
In the big picture. Because we have such a high volume of cases that we handle, it's not practical to look on a case-by-case, go pull the physical files out and look at them. You do need a global picture to determine whether or not you are operating, number one, efficiently, but number two, effectively. So if we need to know the clients that we're serving, how are we doing in that? So the things that I want to know that impact our client representation are how often are we seeing our clients at the jails? How often are we meeting with our clients? What is the time frame between when we get appointed to represent a client and when the case finally resolves? Those are all things that are really, number one, important to our clients. But I think it's also important for citizens to be able to know what their public defender's office is doing and hold us accountable.
And would this be open data? So would there be the ability as a citizen to see?
I think that we could produce some open data. Now, obviously, we have confidentiality rules related to individual clients,
of course.
Right? But if we could produce a data report that says, we conducted 1,200 jail visits last year, or we could produce a data report that says the cost associated with public defender representation of a client in a misdemeanor case is this much money as compared to what it costs taxpayers if a private lawyer is appointed. Right? You could start to get some real metrics on the value that the public defender's office brings to the community.
And with that in mind, because I agree, I think that there's a lot of data that you can always capture that shows what you're doing, but then do you think that this also has the capacity to tie it to outcome? So if there were, let's just, as an example, if you were able to say, I made 5 visits to the jail for this particular person, and that prevented them from going back into the system. Mm-hmm. Do you see this data also linking to outcomes, not just...
Absolutely. So I think the things that, and there's the breadth of information that you could potentially get that I think would be useful is amazing. We could analyze in how many cases did we involve an investigator? And when an investigator is involved, does that produce a better outcome? In how many cases did we involve somebody from our social services division? And are outcomes in cases where we involve someone from social services division of our office better than cases
Right. I mean, that's the kind, data for data's sake is... But for me, it's about if that data actually can connect it to something that we can actually manage and then have a better outcome on.
And I think there's other things like driver's license cases.
Okay, let's talk, you've got a driver's license.
We have a request in here that's a backup to the PIP proposal that we have made. We're going for the PIP.
We're going for the PIP. Okay.
This is Plan B. But I think if we were to look at our representation of clients on driver's license cases, we may see that, 60, 70% of our clients are having their case dismissed in driver's license cases. From a systems approach, I think that would make people stop and say, well, if 70% of driver's license cases in which the public defender is involved are getting dismissed, what are we doing here? Why are there criminal charges being pursued if 70% of those charges end up getting dismissed? Okay. So that identifies potentially an inefficiency not within the system and allows us to look at how we're spending resources much the same way the PIP proposals are trying to look at how efficiencies across systems. So I think there's all kinds of things that having a data person would allow us to do. And I think the reality is almost every agency within Metro today is looking at data and trying to figure out how can we use data to help us do better. Right. So.
Talia.
Okay. Do you want to talk about your second item?
Yeah, so the second item is, and is about what we call vertical representation. And really what that means in the long run is the same lawyer represents somebody from the beginning of the case to the end of the case. It's as simple as that. But historically...
Is that a best practice that most places use? Okay.
Yes.
So what happens now?
Right
now, we have generally used that model for the most serious of cases that have come into the office historically. And I've been there 20 years now. So going back 20 years, that's what we did. But because we have been so overstretched over the years, and because our culture has always been in the office to help as many people as we can, we have historically prioritized efficiency and using a more efficient model, which I call tag team representation. So we would have a lawyer assigned to a docket in General Sessions Court to represent every client of the office on the docket that day.
I see.
If we had 10 clients and 5 of those individuals' cases got continued to another docket, those 5 individuals will likely have a different lawyer who's in court with them next time.
Okay.
So in 2002, the American Bar Association produced their 10 principles of what's necessary for an effective indigent defense system. And it wasn't, they weren't created for public defenders. They were created for policymakers who are responsible for administering indigent defense systems to say these are the necessities for a quality indigent defense system. And one of them is same lawyer beginning to end of case. Okay. So we have, in 2014, we started to shift to implement that practice. And I hesitate to call it a best practice in some ways because I think it's an essential practice. It's not like we're shooting to do something that's well above what is the minimum. It is really what is essential and what needs to be done. So we started implementing that in 2014, in fact, because the General Sessions judges made some changes at that time to how they're structured, their courts, and it allowed the Sessions dockets, courtrooms, to align with the 6 criminal court judges that we have. So we started moving to a system that staffs one team of lawyers in both sets of courtrooms. So the General Sessions Court that feeds to the criminal court. So a team of 6 lawyers now staffs both of those courtrooms so that we can provide vertical, consistent representation. So we rolled that out. We feel like that was successful. We have just rolled out 2 more teams like that for divisions 2 and 3. But we have reached our limit with where we can go with that model given our current staffing with lawyers.
So you need 6 positions in order to do, and if you had those 6 positions, that would complete the rollout for all.
Yes.
3 years.
Right. Over 3 years?
That's over a 3-year period.
Right. We would hopefully accomplish it.
3 years.
Right. Our goal is to accomplish that the sooner the better, but I think a relatively good goal for us would probably be within the next 2 years.
Now, Don, I remember something from when I was on Metro Council that there's a proportionality here. So anytime you add staff or resources to the public defender, you also have to add to the district attorney or vice versa.
Vice versa.
It's vice versa.
Yes.
Okay, so by creating all of this for you does not necessarily mean that we have to proportionally add that to
Correct.
Okay, I'll just make sure, because obviously trying to keep all that. Okay.
Yes. So I think this is what we believe is the best model for our clients. And in the end, just a short pitch for this. I think the more we can do for our clients, the better off our city is. Our clients are traditionally in the underserved population. The more we can do to produce quality outcomes for them, and quality outcomes for our clients involve having a meaningful relationship with their lawyer so that they can trust in the criminal justice system. I think there's a national conversation going on right now about problems within criminal justice systems across the country. I think Nashville has a really positive, I don't think we have nearly some of the horrible problems we've seen elsewhere, but certainly there, I think, are concerns within our client community about equality of justice and whether or not they are getting represented in this system as well as they need to be. And so that is the constituency that we primarily answer to, is our client base. Obviously, the rest of Nashville is concerned and cares about what we're doing, and we are accountable to them too. And to that population of people who don't use our office, frankly, I think what I'd like those folks to understand is that the more we can do to help our clients get good outcomes, the better that is for the city overall. If people don't end up with convictions so that they can get a better job, that's good for the city. If people don't end up in jail for long periods of time so their kids go into foster care, that's good for the city. There's so many ways that I think investing in public defense on the front end is really a good investment for the city. And I could talk forever about it, but I won't.
Anything else?
I'm good.
Rich? Nope. We appreciate all you do. We appreciate you making time to come down and talk about this, and thank you. And I'll look forward to seeing you at a PIP, it sounds like.
Yes, you will. Yes. And I guess the last thing I would say that I meant to say is usually I'm here asking about salaries for our lawyers, and I'm excited about the pay plan proposal that is before the Civil Service Commission right now, and just want to say thank you.
You bet.
For that.
As I don't know if you watched the first budget hearing that we started, but the number one priority this year is to make sure that our employees are recognized for all the hard work that they do.
We are excited about that. They are excited about it, and I am getting that message to them that that's
Good.
what Mayor Berry's priority is, and they're very appreciative. So
Good. Thank you for that. Thank you all.